Subscribe to this channel. Thank you so very much for tuning in. This is a very interesting live stream. I want to read you the New York Post. Trump calls for Nancy Pelosi to be prosecuted over husband's $500,000 Visa stock trade. We now have Kash Patel and Dan Bongino at the Federal Bureau of Investigation. This, ladies and gentlemen, is a sea change in American politics. Very likely they're already looking into this, especially with Elon Musk. Takes familiar fraud, waste claims to Joe Rogan with DOJ discussion. There's a tremendous amount of fraud and waste. And the rebuttal from media is, well, there were some mistakes here and there. He hasn't been perfect in documenting the fraud. So therefore, it's not as bad as they say. When in reality, it's far worse than we could imagine. And likely we'll find out a whole lot more. But if you look at, ladies and gentlemen, if you look at where this is heading, there's almost certainly going to be an indictment very soon. According to President Trump, Trump calls for Nancy Pelosi to be prosecuted. Let's get started, ladies and gentlemen. Hit subscribe to this channel. Your super chat support is greatly appreciated. You can't be this good at investing. It's just impossible. Let's get started.
Nancy Pelosi flatly denies helping her husband gain a stock market advantage after he allegedly purchased millions of dollars in chip stock ahead of a House vote to pass industry subsidies. Listen to this.
Over the course of your career, has your husband ever made a stock purchase or sale based on information you received from you?
No, absolutely not.
Okay. And she's gone. Tom Fitton, Judicial Watch president, joins us now. Tom, she says that she's innocent. Everything is above board. What do you make of this whole thing?
Well, you know, she and her husband are, in my view, the definition of insiders. You have this massive subsidy bill, which is a corporate welfare, that's about to be voted on in the Senate. I think $55 to $75 billion, depending on how you count it. And it's designed to help so-called chip makers. Well, this type of trading suggests it's designed to help Nancy Pelosi. And if I were running the Securities Exchange Commission, I'd look at trades like this by Nancy Pelosi, and there have been others involved in similar insider-type trading, or trading that suggests corrupt trading. And I just presume there's something up, and I do an investigation. You know, if you were in the private sector and you engaged in this type of behavior, you would be subject to investigation. And, you know, when you have a massive bill like this passed and you have the Speaker of the House, her family doing investing ahead of time, it not only compromises her office, but it compromises the whole House.
Tom, is there actually a crime that could have been committed here? Or is this just one of the many cracks Congress allows itself to do something that looks improper but isn't actually illegal?
Well, you know, engaging in behavior that looks improper is unethical under the House rules. And so you can have an internal House investigation. We don't know if there was a crime committed. But insider trading is an elastic term, and many American citizens have been caught up in it, and investigations related to it. And Securities Exchange Commission has jurisdiction. You know, I suspect the Biden Securities Exchange Commission isn't going to do much against Nancy Pelosi, but it highlights why this bill is probably bunk and should be stopped, because it's as much about lining the pockets of others as it is about helping chip makers.
Tom, there's also this. We're hearing that the Hunter Biden probe is now reaching what's being called a critical stage. And
so President Trump has already called for Pelosi to be prosecuted. The stock trades are fantastic. They have far surpassed not only obviously like the S&P 500 or the Dow Jones or normal stock indices, the performance of just really good investors can't get close to what the Pelosi's have accomplished. Okay, they've far outperformed the market, and I don't think there's a firm on Wall Street that's ever existed Literally, I don't think there's a firm on Wall Street that has ever existed, nor has there been an investor who's ever invested that has surpassed the portfolio increase over the years of the Pelosi's. I could be wrong, but let's continue.
Welcome back. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi back in the spotlight because of her stock trades. The lawmaker disclosed her husband, Paul Pelosi, purchased options to buy up between $750,000 and $1.5 million worth of Apple stock and up to $600,000 in Microsoft stock last month. The news coming just months after the speaker signaled that she may be willing to advance a bill to ban individual stock trading by lawmakers. She had previously shot down the idea, claiming it's unfair to exclude lawmakers from playing the market, but that was really disingenuous, Dagan, because nobody is telling her to not have access to the stock market. Like most of us who may have access to inside information, there are indexes to buy or exchange-traded funds or mutual funds rather than buying individual stocks. So
I believe Martha Stewart went to jail for that type of thing. I don't know if it was actually the insider trading or potentially lying about it or one aspect of it. I forgot exactly the case, but like Martha Stewart served either jail or prison time years back. Okay, this is not difficult to prove. Okay, it's so easy to prove. You simply, Kash Patel and Dan Bongino very likely either have an investigation or will investigate, and the DOJ under Pam Bondi will almost certainly indict, especially because this correlates directly to Elon Musk and DOJ. See, the way Democrats work is they want everything to be, they want the status quo. They don't want $20 million for Sesame Street in Iraq to be discovered. They don't want that. It's like the end of the world if we find out that there are, plays and operas and cartoons and comic books and all these different crazy things linked to very bizarre left-leaning ideologies paid for with our tax dollars. And so that's just part of the gigantic grift. Okay, that's very likely linked to why we have such a terrible deficit and national debt. So we fix the budget deficit, and then we have to address the national debt, or else the country goes bankrupt. And so if you have all of that debt and all of these bizarre expenditures that nobody knows about, for example, through USAID, and then you have non-governmental organizations and potentially political action committees benefiting as well, then you have lawmakers like Pelosi, who then not only benefit from a Byzantine labyrinth of USAID-linked NGOs and possibly political action committees, but then you have insider trading, blatant insider trading. And that entire apparatus, this labyrinth, this monstrosity of bureaucracy protects people in the Democratic Party and the Republican Party who potentially engage in insider trading, which is a serious, serious crime.
So she's disingenuous when she comes out with this idea that it's unfair that lawmakers shouldn't invest in the stock market. Your reaction?
I don't think she even cares about the appearance of impropriety anymore. I've said this before, but this woman is so out of touch. She thinks the Golden Corral is a chain of jewelry stores in Texas. These aren't even stocks. These are options trades. And to your point, Maria, I have never, ever since I started working as a financial journalist almost 30 years ago, I've never owned individual stocks. I've always owned mutual funds or exchange traded funds, never ever owning an individual stock. But we know that she's rich. Look no further than the car that her husband was driving after that accident and DUI that he got. It was a Porsche, as we say down south.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Lee, this is the woman who is overseeing legislation, writing legislation for tech companies and everybody else, Lee. I mean, we just recently learned Microsoft was going to be getting a big contract from the Department of Defense. How does she buy the stock before we know what's going on in terms of government business with these companies? This certainly doesn't look good.
It doesn't look good at all, and it's not fair. But the bottom line, too, that I find so ironic about all of this is she is, one of the leaders of the party that's supposed to be fighting against big companies. She's supposed to be fighting for the little guy. She's operating the whole elite stratosphere on all kinds of information that other people don't have. And it's just simply the hypocrisy of it is what is, I think, so staggering.
So it's about the information that lawmakers have that you and I and just everyday American citizens don't have. That's the issue. So that's the real issue here. Hold on one second.
Here's a life lesson. Never use Viagra. Now pay close attention. Go to your kitchen and grab a pinch of...
Look who's back with us. He's a columnist for The Hill magazine and Fox News contributor, Joe Concha. Joe, we wanted you on this story because you've written about this and you've looked into this. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, her family sold her husband up to $3 million worth of shares in Google's parent Alphabet just a month before the Justice Department in 8 states opened a massive antitrust lawsuit into Google. When you saw the story, what was your reaction?
And a lot of that money comes from stocks, options, investments made by Paul Pelosi. That's according to a Business Insider report, Liz. So either he's Gordon Gekko or he has something that we don't have. Inside by augmented reality headsets from Paul Pelosi exercised options to purchase 25,000 Microsoft shares worth $5 million. Okay. And then less than 2 weeks later, wow, lo and behold, the U.S. Army disclosed a $22 billion deal to buy augmented reality headsets from Microsoft. And shares of the companies, their shares of the company rose sharply after the deal was announced. So either Paul Pelosi somehow knew this is just the right time to buy Microsoft, or perhaps his wife, the House Speaker, knew that contract was coming down the pike. And there are other examples as well here. Overall, Liz, the Pelosi's are worth something like $115 million. And a lot of that money comes from stocks, options, investments made by Paul Pelosi. That's according to a Business Insider report, Liz. So either he's Gordon Gekko or he has something that we don't have, inside information.
To your point, options, that's the story. Look at Senator Josh Hawley. He introduced his Pelosi bill to ban stock trading in Congress. Watch the senator on Hannity last night. Watch this.
But Nancy Pelosi is the perfect example of what should not be happening in D.C., which is people getting rich on the stock market off of information they know because they're a member of Congress.
So he is saying it. People in D.C. say it. But Nancy Pelosi denies it. I mean, the timing, to your point, of his trades have been called into question around government contracts and legislation. Let's show it. What did you think of what Senator Hawley just said?
I think he is 100% right. And you're going to be amazed by this, Elizabeth, but he is saying...
So bought Tesla stock a month before President Biden signed an executive order requiring all federal vehicles must be electric. So exercised $2 million in Microsoft options before Microsoft won a $22 billion contract. So it's like, what? This is, it's like Democrats, well, you don't know if there was anyone she knew that told her. See, there's nothing here. I mean, this is just like private servers with Madam Secretary, a laptop. They get away with pretty much everything. It's unbelievable. You know what? I don't think they'll be getting away with these types of things. Bought $11 worth of mega cap stocks amid tech legislation, but $5 million option in NVIDIA before the vote on $52 billion new chip maker subsidies. Gee, it's just a coinky-dink.
exactly what Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has said about this as well. So it's not just Republicans that are calling on Congress to not be able to trade on stocks and options anymore, but even Democrats, particularly from the squad, are saying that, no, this is wrong too. So we now have bipartisan agreement on something because year after year, somehow, not just the Pelosi's, but the swamp, members of Congress somehow outperform the market.
I mean, to your point, Democrat Abigail Spanberger said yes to this ban. Put your money in a blind trust. I mean, that's not, the perfect solution either. But also, Jerry Nadler and Adam Schiff were for a ban too, Joe. But we didn't get it because Nancy Pelosi ran out the clock on this. It was in the omnibus spending bill, and then it just wasn't. It vanished before Christmas.
Yeah, and she said last year that she believes in a free market society, therefore Congress should be able to trade in stocks. But no, when you know that a contract's coming down the pike, or you know that an industry is about to be in trouble because of more regulations, I mean, that's a layup right there. And it's not just the House Speaker. Basically, every member of Congress has this information. Some, I would hope, would still say, no, you know what, that's wrong. I'm not going to trade off of this. But probably enough are going to do that in these situations because, to quote Gordon Gekko, greed is good. Greed works.
Yeah, well, to your point, Republican Senator Richard Burr got in trouble, right? He got inside information to trade on the pandemic, and he got in trouble for it. So it's not just Democrats, it's Republicans. It's just that, Joe, taxpayers don't want the feeling that, people go into D.C. to serve. Politicians go to serve, but they come out only serving themselves. So your final word.
Yeah, 16% approval for Congress in Gallup, and just 2% have a great deal of trust of Congress. 2%, maybe because of situations like this. But here, Elizabeth, they're doing the right thing with this Pelosi bill if it does pass. The question is, does the
this morning's jobs number, look at it on your screen. Peter Morisi joins me now. Peter, that is a strong report. That is a strong economy. You're going to give me an argument on that?
So I think we're going to get into the percentage gains in a second.
Last year, this comes as Congress has stalled trades, saw a 65% return last year, or a 60%. The subject for a minute. Nancy Pelosi's stock trades saw a 65% return last year. This comes as Congress has stalled talks on banning.
What did I just hear?
Lawmakers from trade. His stock trades. The subject for a minute. Nancy Pelosi's stock trades saw a 65% return last year. This comes as Congress has stalled talks.
Now, if you're a liberal Democrat or progressive or left-leaning, you vote Harris, Clinton, Biden, I want to just, if you imagine if you heard Eric Trump or Donald Trump Jr. or Jared Kushner or President Trump himself, what if you heard that their stock trades were up 65%, the trades that they purchased, that they engaged in within 1 year, okay? Nobody does that. That's impossible to do. It's not possible. I mean, it is possible, yes, but it's possible, but generally doesn't happen.
Nancy Pelosi's stock trades saw a 65% return last year. This comes as Congress has stalled talks on banning lawmakers from trading stocks. Do you think there should be a ban, Peter?
Well, I think congressmen and women should not be trading in the individual stocks and so forth. They're involved in too many regulatory activities that have a consequence for their holdings. My feeling is they should be in index funds, and those should be put aside in a way they don't touch them. Now, you got the problem that she's got a spouse. I mean, should spouses really be limited?
Right.
It's a very tough question in this day and age.
I've got a solution. How about immediate full disclosure? When any member of Congress makes any trade of any kind, it's posted. You can see what they've done, where they bought, why they bought, and how much they bought. What's wrong with that?
I like that very much. It's kind of like corporate disclosures. You know, what are the principals doing? Why not? But you know, I really get a kick out of this. The Democrats hate the free market. They despise capitalism. But you know, if you start to threaten the New York Times intellectual property, it sues a nonprofit like ChatGPT. And Nancy, goodness, Nancy. Shouldn't you really be a Republican with stock holdings like that?
65% return is pretty good, if you ask me.
Well, she likes leverage positions. I mean, if you buy in the options market,
that's it.
You know what happens is when it goes up, you really go up. When it goes down, you're in a lot of trouble.
So she's buying stock options, you know, betting where the stock is going to go, whether she buys, you know, and expects it to go up, or you know, buys a put or whatever, expecting it to go down. Let's continue.
Got breaking news. Reports coming in that federal investigation, that grand jury in Delaware into Hunter Biden's business.
Probing Taiwanese airspace. Husband is making millions of dollars and trading in stocks. It would take care of all of those problems. It's a bipartisan bill. Pelosi could have brought that up 4 years ago when I started in Congress, but she hasn't, because her husband is making millions of dollars off of having information. And of course, she would say that they've never had a conversation, just like the president has said he's never had a conversation with Hunter Biden about his business dealings. But we know that somebody with close familial ties is having conversations about things like that. We should ban stock trading with members of Congress, individual stocks. It shouldn't be allowed, and it would prevent these type of things. At the very least, it makes it look very, very bad for members of Congress to have your spouses doing deals like that on information that obviously she was privy to as the Speaker of the House, and making money off of business deals.
You know, Congresswoman Kat Cammack, to your point, she was with us last night on this, and on Paul Pelosi buying up to $5 million in stock in chipmaker NVIDIA ahead of that vote on the $52 billion in taxpayer subsidies for U.S. chipmakers to take on China. Let's listen to this.
For example, of this double set of standards that Congress lives by, that Americans don't have to live by. And it's ridiculous, it's totally unfair, and it needs to change. The Speaker is in control of what bills come to the House floor and when. Tell me that that is not the most incestuous relationship of all. We know that he's getting inside information, because there's no way that he would have known that in July, the CHIPS Act, or USICA, was going to be coming to the House floor for a vote after.
So anyone else in America in her position with that performance in terms of stock trades would have been indicted and in prison. Anybody else, nobody could have gotten away with that. If potentially, possibly, as the Honorable James Comey always says, potentially, possibly, potentially, potentially and possibly, if, possibly, because I would never accuse the Honorable Nancy Pelosi of committing any crimes. Lord knows that she would never in a million years tell her husband when a specific bill is going to perhaps impact a stock, and then have her husband buy the stock. That would never in a million years happen. I would never even want to suggest that. That's what Democrats is suggesting. Are you suggesting foul play? A suggestion of foul play is a conspiratorial theory. And meanwhile, they're like, is the Steele dossier true? Let's go search forever. So, of course, they're all over the place. There's no suspicion when it comes to Democrats. Let's continue.
After the Senate has been considering their version.
What do you make of that take?
Well, she's right. There's no way he didn't know that that was going to happen, and there's no way that Pelosi didn't know that that deal was going to be done and that bill was going to be come up, because her and Schumer coordinate with the business of the House and the Senate to pass bills. So it comes up for a vote. Now it's presumed to come to the House either this week or next week while we're still here in Washington. You know darn well that she knew exactly what was going on. She tipped off her husband. He made that deal, but we'll never be able to prove it, because she's going to say that she doesn't talk to her husband about this type of information. But the American people are smarter than that. The American people really.
Yeah, but you don't just need to. I don't think. I correct me if I'm wrong. The congressman is awesome here, but I don't think you just need to prove if she spoke to her husband. I mean, there's other ways to prove, overt criminal activity.
realize for what this is.
Speaker Pelosi, she's been reluctant about a ban on trading, stock trading by Congress and their spouses. Her family's net worth is $130 million. Let's watch the speaker here. Watch.
Insider just completed a 5-month investigation finding that 49 members of Congress and 182 senior congressional staffers have violated the Stock Act, the insider trading law. I'm wondering if you have any reaction to that, and secondly, should members of Congress and their spouses...
She's getting very angry. Very angry. And when she gets angry, she speaks like Katharine Hepburn. Nancy Pelosi speaks like Katharine Hepburn. Sometimes, when she's very angry.
...be banned from trading individual stocks while serving in Congress.
We have a responsibility to report in the stock, on the stock. Yeah. We are a free market economy. They should be able to participate in that.
So we're...
It's a free market, and please, stop talking. Stop with your stupid nonsense. You know I'm a Democrat. You know I'm a Democrat, and it doesn't apply to me. Please, Trump, evil, Trump, Russia, Trump, revolution. He tried to foment a rebellion.
Get a
So, she was upset.
Topic buzz. Nancy Pelosi denying accusations of insider trading after financial disclosures showed that her husband bought as much as $5 million in computer chip stock, NVIDIA, ahead of this week's vote on a bill that would deliver billions of dollars in subsidies to the chip manufacturing industry. Now, the Speaker's office telling Fox Business, quote, the Speaker does not own any stocks, as you can see from the required disclosures with which the Speaker fully cooperates.
As you can see, I own no stocks. So, you were moted as always. Weird, spiteful Republicans. But your husband owns it. Am I my husband? Again, with the misogynistic statements.
These transactions are marked SP for spouse. The Speaker has no prior knowledge or subsequent knowledge.
Did you not see the SP? Well, what's the problem then?
Involvement in any transactions. Lou, judging by that statement, it looks like they've dotted their I's and crossed their T's. Legally speaking, it's probably kosher, but that doesn't mean that it's ethical, right?
It doesn't. This doesn't pass the smell test. I mean, anyone that's been in a relationship, I was married for 16 years. If I'm going and swinging around millions of dollars in a stock trade and my spouse or partner doesn't know about it, there's no way.
My husband bought a crystal ball from an Eastern European friend of ours. And through that crystal ball, we have virtually 100% correct stock picks. And so it says also SP. Stop with your nonsense.
Just no average American is going to believe this is real. At the end of the day, the best stock pickers should not be in Washington, D.C. It's long overdue for legislation to prevent this. It's just as bad as insider trading. And, I'll take a fair bet here. I think Paul's picked the wrong chip stock anyway. He should have picked NXPI over NVIDIA because NXPI has much more exposure to the automotive sector. So I hope his trade works out terribly for him.
Yeah, well, we'll have to see. We'll have to also see what happens with the DUI charges that were filed against him as well. That's another issue. But it's so interesting to me, Angela, because I look at when it comes to Speaker Pelosi, it's rules for thee, not for me. This is not legislation that she's pursuing, right, to make sure that Congress and trades and spouses trades would be regulated because of the potential to share insider information.
That's right. In fact, almost 7 months ago, last December, Speaker Pelosi was actively advocating against such legislation. And I think her office's explanation here is just a little bit insulting to the American public, because when they say that SP stands for spouse on her filing documents, it might as well stand for Speaker Pelosi. Her husband's gotten himself into hot water on this before. In fact, just a little over a year ago, he cashed in on more than $5 million in Alphabet stock right before that House committee was set to vote on reining in big tech. So the timing is just way too suspicious. It is too convenient to be true for the Pelosi.
Look who's back, Congresswoman Kat Cammack from House Homeland Security. Congresswoman, it's great to have you on. Okay, this D.C. controversy, it's good to see you. Lucrative stock trading by Nancy Pelosi's husband, while she's Speaker of the House and has been in Congress. Her team's answer, her office is saying Nancy Pelosi does not own any stocks. Here's the problem. The Pelosis live in California. California is a community property state, so she does own them.
Yeah, no, this is what's crazy. I would love for a member.
As you can see, it says SP. And enough with the nonsense.
Of the media to ask her about their arrangement, whether they have a prenup or if they were to divorce, what would happen with all of those assets that she claims aren't hers. This is ridiculous. And the little known fact that I think Americans should know is that when members trade stocks, they have up to 30 days to report it. 30 days. And even then, they don't have to give the exact amount of what they purchased or sold. It's just a range. So this is just one more example of this double set of standards that Congress lives by, that Americans don't have to live by. And it's ridiculous. It's totally unfair, and it needs to change. This is absolutely the swamp at work at its best.
You know, Congresswoman, the other problem, too, is Paul Pelosi, he buys stock options in companies like big tech companies, right? Again, making millions of dollars while Pelosi's overseeing potential legislation that could hit companies like big tech. To be able to trade stock options profitably, you have to know or figure out which direction that stock could go, and then you make a big profit. So this feels like, you know, there's talk that they've got an insider information edge.
Absolutely. When you think about this, there you have that 30-day lag of when things are going to be reported, if they're reported at all. And if they aren't reported, get this, it's only a $200 fine. So there's millions of dollars of stocks that have been traded, that have been bought, and you think that the $200 fine is going.
So with the timing, you just have to, I mean, this is not difficult to prove. This is not difficult to prove. Okay, the timing is like perfect. So again, it's just because if Trump did this, he would land. If anyone around Trump or Trump did this, they would already be in prison. That's why, like, when like Bill Maher or others would say, well, Trump committed crimes. No, he didn't. Had he actually committed a crime, oh my God, they would have imprisoned him immediately. That's what Democrats wanted to do. They wanted to imprison Trump for things that weren't crimes. That's why he wasn't imprisoned. They utilized the United States government against Trump and made things up and took things completely out of context or simply just fabricated them. But Hunter's laptop, Clinton servers, Pelosi stock trades, these are like legitimate crimes that anyone would be indicted on. But they weren't, because up until recently, let's just say until Dan Bongino, Pam Bondi, and Kash Patel, President Trump, John Radcliffe, Tulsi Gabbard, up until this new government, none of these Democrats have ever been held accountable. So I do believe that they will be held accountable in the next 4 years.
To bother the Pelosis? I think not. They clearly have no regard for the law, as discovered by the drunk driving incident by Mr. Pelosi. But also think about this. You have all of these stocks that are being bought and sold all the time.
So here you have a Fox News statement. Apple's Tim Cook personally called Pelosi to slow down Bill. Husband owns as much as $25 million in Apple stock. I mean, it's like, this is not difficult. None of this is difficult. Okay? The average stockholder of Apple doesn't get a call from Tim Cook, and also doesn't get access to a bill that can affect stocks. So it's like, this is not difficult to prove.
Time. Legislation that is typically in draft form, and the Speaker is in control of what bills come to the House floor and when. Tell me that that is not the most incestuous relationship of all. We know that he's getting inside information, because there's no way that he would have known that in July, the CHIPS Act, or USICA, was going to be coming to the House floor for a vote after the Senate has been considering their version. There's just no way he would have known that, because we had seen months ago action on this bill, and then it died out. So clearly there was some insider baseball going on, some insider information, and it's wrong. We absolutely should be investigating this, and she should be held accountable for sharing this information with her husband.
So, and the Congresswoman, okay, to your point, buying millions of dollars worth of stock in big tech companies with headquarters in Pelosi's own district. That chip maker NVIDIA is in Pelosi's home district. Again, $52 billion in taxpayer funding of chip makers to take on China. That's coming down the pipeline. Apple, Google, all have their headquarters right in Pelosi's district. That's who Paul Pelosi's invested in. I mean, critics are saying this raises questions that Nancy Pelosi leads a life of privilege. She and her husband think they're untouchable. And that, you know, the idea that her job has nothing to do with his financial duel.
How do you get $130 million working as a congresswoman for, 30 years or so, 20 years? No, 30 years. How is that possible? This is why, like, Bernie Sanders and AOC, they're like the biggest phonies that have ever existed. Because they work alongside, like she was the Speaker of the House. They work alongside Democrats. And the rebuttal is, well, you know, Republicans are worse. Like, no, not really. The amount of money that Democrats have made through government far surpasses any of the money that Republicans usually go into Congress already rich and wealthy, like President Trump. Okay. But how do you get $130 million? Now, I can't, there's no direct evidence right now that Nancy Pelosi committed any crimes. And according to the New York Post article, President Trump has called for her to be prosecuted. So I'm citing a New York Post article. And I'm also citing a Fox News segment that alleges or that claims Pelosi has $130 million. I can only assume that it was all done legally, that the $130 million that she made was done through legal and appropriate or above board means. So I'm not accusing her of anything in particular. However, there's a question mark that Democrats would be asking if Republicans made $130 million. If Trump made $130 million in stock trades, that would be a big issue. See, the difference between Trump and Pelosi is that Trump was a billionaire before government. Pelosi and Biden and others became multimillionaires in the Clintons after government. But how does that happen? Well, it's obvious. It's very likely a rhetorical question with a very easy answer.
Doings and dealings, it just doesn't pass the smell test. I mean, this is making money off of your perch in Congress. It feels like arrogant elitism, the swamp on steroids.
Absolutely. I mean, this is absolutely why Americans across this country do not trust members of Congress. It's because they live by a separate set of standards. There's inside information that members of Congress are privy to because they work and craft this legislation. They engage with these companies on a regular basis. They talk to the associations. Not only that, but they control the floor schedule. In this case, Speaker Pelosi is the one who decides when this bill comes to the floor and has regular conversations with the other chamber in the Senate to determine when this will go to conference. So again, a double set of standards. We saw this under Hillary Clinton. We've seen it under the Pelosi's. There's a double set of standards that exist for the politically connected and the limousine liberals and the elites. It has to change. We can no longer keep going down this path and expect people to abide by laws when members of Congress don't abide by them. So it's pretty simple, and I think we need to get a handle on this.
Congresswoman Kamek, thanks for joining us.
So that is 100% right. That's 100% right. You know, that's true. But we have a new sheriff in town. Trump is, I think this is directly linked to DOJ, by the way. They break down and, you know, tear down the apparatus propping up the Democratic Party and then indict people who potentially committed crimes.
Shackling us with taxes, destroying the dollar with reckless spending, but the speaker, who makes in the low six figures, has somehow very easily become one of the richest members of Congress. What's her secret? It appears to be her husband, Paul. After they got married, Paul opened up a real estate and venture capital firm. And through his connections, he pushed Nancy into the political world, helping her get elected to Congress in 1987. The couple has timed the market perfectly over the years while Nancy's been a Washington insider. Real estate, stocks, the Pelosis always know what the right investment is. Since getting married, they've acquired a mansion in Napa Valley, a vineyard home worth up to $25 million, real luxury. It's on 16 acres. Pelosi has a gorgeous waterfront condo in the exclusive K Street region in D.C., now worth over $2 million. She has a multi-million-dollar red brick mansion in California's Pacific Heights. And Paul owns at least 2 commercial properties in San Francisco, combined worth up to $50 million. Since regaining the gavel in 2018, the Pelosi's wealth has skyrocketed. That year, her financial disclosure report revealed a net worth of over $114 million. Then, in 2019, Pelosi's assets totaled up to a whopping $271 million. And in 2020, those numbers went up even more, to as high as $315 million. Quite a lot of crumbs. So where's the money coming from?
So the last segment talked about $130 million, but maybe it's closer to $300 million. Who knows? Again, this is all speculation. And certainly I would never accuse the Pelosis of any criminal activity, other than the potential criminal activity they've already possibly committed, pertaining to a DUI or whatever. But I would never accuse them of insider trading, other than, citing the president, saying that a $500,000 Visa stock trade was illegal. So let's continue.
60 Minutes basically accused Paul Pelosi of insider trading.
Madam Leader, I wanted to ask you why you and your husband back in March of 2008 accepted and participated in a very large IPO deal from Visa at a time there was major legislation affecting their credit card companies making its way through.
She's really upset. This is in 2011 when you had the ability for journalists in the mainstream to do this type of thing. And this journalist in particular is fantastic.
Through the House. And did you consider that to be a conflict of interest?
I don't know what your point is of your question. Is there some point that you want to make with?
Oh, what? What? You're babbling as always. You're babbling. I don't even understand you. What are you even saying now?
Through the House. And did you consider that to be a conflict of interest?
I don't know what your point is of your question. Is there some point that you want to make?
Why do you even exist on this planet? You're speaking, but nothing is coming out. I don't understand anything you're saying. Is there a point? What's the point here? You're speaking complete nonsense. Nonsense as always, because you lack knowledge. SP. It's right there for you to read. SP.
Make with that?
Well, I guess what I'm asking is, do you think it's all right for a speaker to accept a very preferential and favorable stock deal?
Well, we didn't.
You participated in the IPO.
Well, I have many
and at the time you were Speaker.
Well, we did it? Yeah, I like that. I respect that. That's not, well, we did it, so, and what? And what now?
Of the House, stock deal.
Well, we didn't.
You participated in a very preferential and favorable
we
stock
didn't,
deal.
Okay.
Well, we didn't.
You participated in the...
I thought she said we did it. Like, yeah, so, what, and? No, she said we didn't. We didn't do that, okay.
IPO.
Well, I have many
and at the time you were
but
Speaker of the House. You don't think it was a conflict of interest or had the appearance of a conflict of interest?
It only has the appearance if you decide that you're going to have elaborate on a false premise. But it's not true.
It's only a conflict of interest that I continually made 100% perfect stock trades right before landmark bills that I helped push in Congress that would only be suspicious if people like you describe this type of above-board behavior in a suspicious manner. So maybe you should look in the mirror and ask yourself, are you happy with who you are? Maybe you should potentially seek counseling, because everything that I did that you claim I didn't do, it has an SP next to it, and again, it's your problem, and maybe it was something that you went through growing up. Who knows? But it's all your fault. And maybe you actually committed insider trading, huh? Ever thought of that?
And that's that.
I don't understand what part's not true.
And that's that.
Yes, sir. That I would act upon an investment.
And that's that. That's it. That's it. No. It's like the Austin Powers.
In 2007, Visa worried the new Democrat Congress would target their swipe fees, costing them billions. So they hired a team of lobbyists who descended on Pelosi. Visa's CEO personally met with her. She got donations from him. One of Nancy's advisors left and became a Visa lobbyist himself. The old inside-outside game. Now get this. Suddenly, Paul Pelosi got a phone call from his broker. He was in luck. Paul was offered a pre-screened invite to get in early on Visa's $18 billion IPO. Did Nancy and her husband hesitate? No. They bought between $1 million and $5 million worth of Visa stock. But it gets better. While Pelosi was Speaker, bills that would have hurt Visa's stock price were blocked in the House. Visa shares going up over 200% during the time, making the Pelosi's a fortune on paper. Nancy Pelosi and her husband have a knack for taking advantage of market timing. In March, Paul Pelosi exercised $2 million worth of Microsoft options just 2 weeks before the tech giant got a $22 billion contract to equip the U.S. Army with high-tech headsets. In January, the Pelosi's got $1 million worth of Tesla stock right before Joe Biden announced electric car incentives. In June, the Pelosi family cashed in big time just before Congress was set to pounce on big tech. Mr. Pelosi exercised options on Google's parent company, Alphabet, have created a lot of suspicions. All we're doing is following the money, and there sure is a lot of it. Joining me now for more on this, President of the Government Accountability Institute and the Drill Down podcast host, Peter Schweitzer. All right, we put it together for you there, Peter. What is your reaction? You know better than anybody how this whole thing works.
Yeah, no, I think you're dead on. Look, the bottom line, Jesse, is we don't mind if people make money with investments. The question is it wedded to your political power? And in the case of the Pelosi's, they not only got that Visa IPO stock, they've participated.
Phil, thank you for the kind words. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Hit subscribe if you're new.
Participated in at least 10 IPO stocks. And these are unusual. These basically go to company founders and insiders. The fact that a politician's family is allowed to participate in an investment that when it goes public generally doubles in value often is a real indicator that there's a problem. I'll add one other thing, Jesse. Those office buildings you mentioned, they own an office building on Belden Street in San Francisco. Nancy Pelosi steered $200 million in federal money to build the 3rd Avenue light railway system in San Francisco. Guess where one of the stops of that light railway system actually stops? Within 2 blocks of their office building. That matters because there's something called the transit premium. If your building is within 2 blocks of a subway or railway stop, it effectively doubles the value of it. And that's precisely what happened to the Pelosi's real estate.
That's very interesting. Also interesting, they've been offered 10 IPO buy-ins. So it's just randomly that these companies give the Pelosi family early access to IPOs. Unbelievably fortunate people, Nancy and Paul. All right, Peter, thank you for following the.
Hey.
Watching her parents. You know the ups and downs of dealing with children. Because yesterday, Nancy Pelosi.
So again, it's not, see, here's the thing. It's like, you don't need, this isn't difficult to prove. At a certain point, if somebody is always, like, how many times have the Pelosi's or any of these Democrats or Republicans, how many times has a person who enriched themselves in Congress in this manner made a bad stock purchase? That is even more important than that. That is just as important as how often they made the perfect buy. How many times did they mess up? Okay, because most investors routinely, even the best investors routinely make poor decisions. So how often did they mess up? How often did they purchase a stock and they just tanked? If that never happens, that's a problem.
This announcement.
When people ask me what are the three most important issues facing the Congress, I always say the same thing. Our children, our children, our children. That is my why I am in Congress, for the children. This is my story and this is my song. As you hear me say, when you're in the arena, you have to be able to take a punch or throw a punch for the children. That is why I am running for re-election to Congress.
That's right. Nancy Pelosi, at age 81, is running for re-election. She says she's doing it for the children. But whose children exactly? Thing. When she raked in millions from a sweetheart Visa credit card IPO. Watch.
Madam Leader, I wanted to ask you why you and your husband back in March of 2008 accepted and participated in a very large IPO deal from Visa. At a time there was major legislation affecting the credit card companies making its way through the House. And did you consider that to be a conflict of interest?
Have you ever once thought of the children?
I don't know what your point is of your question. Is there some point that you want to make with that?
Well, I guess what I'm asking is, do you think it's all right for a speaker to accept a very preferential and favorable stock deal?
Well, we didn't.
You participated in the IPO.
Well, I have many
and at the time you were Speaker of the House. You don't think it was a conflict of interest or had the appearance of a conflict of interest?
It only has the appearance if you decide that you're going to have elaborate on a false premise. But it's not true.
So the false premise would be that she knew she had insider trading. That's the false premise. The correct premise is that they're both the most brilliant investors who've ever lived.
And that's that.
I don't understand what part's not true.
Yes, sir. That I would act upon an investment.
She was trying to do the Jedi mind trick. You know, she was, what part's not true? Yes, sir. Huh? Hmm? And he's like, what? You will let these pass. She almost succeeded.
How dare anybody question her honor and integrity?
Ladies and gentlemen, so thank you so very much. Hit subscribe if you're new. I'll be back this evening, but Trump calls for Nancy Pelosi to be prosecuted over husband's $500,000 Visa trade. What can I tell you other than, things are heating up. They are heating up, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be back this evening for another live stream. Hit subscribe. Thank you so very much. I'll see you.